Islamic Relief's Moustafa Osman, head of the Humanitarian Department, has been to the Horn of Africa to assess the situation. Here, he's in an IDP camp in Mogadishu with trustee Dr. Alfi. With 12 million people affected by the drought, Moustafa has been working hard to assess the situation and find a solution.
After visiting the region, the most affected region in Somalia and Kenya, it's become clear to me now and to everybody that the poor rain season is not the sole factor that affected people here. Those people have been marginalized politically, socially, economically for years. On top of all of that, they have a very severe conflicts in the region as well. That's why their coping mechanisms have been eroded gradually, and they become very vulnerable to cope with any additional factor like environmental shock, like poor rainy seasons. That's why our strategy should be the opposite of that. We need to work on empowering those people, increasing their capacity, their coping mechanism, and reduce their vulnerability and exposure to the environmental shock.
Moustafa, you've explained the causes of what's taking place.
Yeah.
What are the solutions?
The solution actually is to go in two ways. Number one, we have to provide those people with immediate life-saving support, providing them with clean water as a priority, food, supplementary feeding for the malnutrition children, health care, because there is so many people affected by this, they have poor health. The longer term is to work on their coping mechanism strategy, basically increasing their capacity and reducing their vulnerability, empowering them. And we need to work much more on political stability. And this is not the role that humanitarian aid should play, but somehow we have to solve the conflict in the region. There is no humanitarian solution for political problems.
You've given us two of the solutions. One is the immediate relief, and the other is building capacity on the ground.
Yes.
What are the challenges you face on the ground?
There's so many challenges, of course, due to the conflict and the harsh conditions around here. Number one, the security. There is no security whatsoever in Somalia. We've been for the first time finish our job at 4 o'clock, where everywhere else we can continue to work 24 hours or at least until 10 o'clock in the evening. But in Somalia, in Mogadishu, we have to hibernate at 4 o'clock. So because of the security. So security is one challenge. Supply chain as well affected by the security. Because number three, accessibility. We cannot access the most vulnerable communities because it's controlled by other groups. In addition to that, finding the right qualified humanitarian aid workers has become very difficult now. The reason is, again, back to security and the harsh condition that we live in. Last one is funding. While we find fund now for our immediate response, unfortunately, so many donors, they don't recognize the importance of disaster preparedness and disaster risk reduction. So we need more fund allocated for disaster risk reduction.
Moustafa, you've given us a really good outline of what's taking place and your vision. If you had your way, if you had all your resources, if you had all your staff, all the capacity, what would the Horn of Africa look like in 6 months' time or a year's time?
I would hope that in 6 years' time, in 6 months' time or whatever, people will go back to their own homeland and start work in their land, start have a normal life as before, like anybody else, like me and you. This is all what we aim. We need people to go and rebuild their own life with their own hands, not for us to build their own life. We need to give them a push in order to be independent.